Welcome to everyone who's joined us for today's panel event. I'll allow a few moments for everyone to dial in and get situated, and we'll be starting in just a couple of moments. It looks like we've almost reached a full house based on those who registered for the event. So officially welcome to this panel on picking a practice area, which is part of the Houston Young Lawyers Association's larger spring programming on preparing for practice, which is geared both toward law students and some of our very youngest Houston lawyers that are part of our HYLA community. Myself, along with my co-chair, Jane Ian Morrow, run the HYLA Mentorship and Transitions Committee, and we are very excited about the spring we have planned for you guys in providing more programming just like this. We've got a panel of 4 today who will be offering their insights on how they got into their practice areas, what it's actually like day to day. The program is approved for CLE credit, for those of you who are practicing attorneys, and the CLE course number for self-reporting is in the chat box on the Zoom. And after the planned questions for the panel portion of our event, we will of course open it up for your questions as the participants, again, fielding those via the Zoom chat feature. So if you think of something while we're in the formal portion of the panel, feel free to chime in via the chat so you don't forget. Or you're welcome to save your questions toward the end. So with that, I'll get started. And Daniella, if you'll get us started just by letting us know, of course, who you practice with, your name, and your law school education background.
Absolutely, Brooksie. Thanks for having us this afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniella Martinez. I am a 5th-year commercial litigation associate at BakerHostelter. And prior to joining BakerHostelter, I went to law school at the University of Texas School of Law, and I clerked for a federal judge in Brownsville.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Rudoff. I am happy to be here today, and I appreciate HYLA having me for this wonderful event. I currently work for Abraham Watkins, which is a personal injury firm for on the plaintiff side in downtown Houston. I've been practicing for about 8 years now. Prior to being with Abraham Watkins, I was a prosecutor for the state of Texas in Fort Bend County, Texas. I also went to South Texas College of Law.
I guess I could take it. Hello, everyone. My name is Kebharu Smith, and it's nice to meet everyone. And again, I also thank HYLA for having me on this panel with the other panelists. I am currently, as of this week, the director of Amazon's Counterfeit Crimes Unit. Was recently appointed to that position, and I joined Amazon as senior corporate counsel in June of 2020. Before I joined Amazon, I worked as a senior trial attorney with the Department of Justice Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section, where I prosecuted intellectual property crime. And prior to that, I was an AUSA in Houston and a state prosecutor in Houston in both the Fort Bend County District Attorney's Office and in the Harris County District Attorney's Office. I graduated from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in 2001. Nice meeting everyone.
Thanks, Kebharu. And we've got one more panelist, Jennifer Hill, working through some audio connection. Better? There, that's perfect.
All right, guys, it's always when you need it, right? It's just that one moment that you need it to work that it falls apart. So my name's Jennifer Hill. This is almost my 9th year being an attorney. I spent almost 8 years being a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor in Montgomery County, then Harris County, and I also was a CPS prosecutor for a little bit. And so right now I'm working at a nonprofit. It's called the Children's Assessment Center. It's in Rice Village. We have a big building with some kids on it. If you drive by it, you'll see it. And I went to Texas Tech School of Law. So.
All right, you're loud and clear now. And back to you, Daniela. Can you tell our participants what drew you to the practice of law and specifically your practice area?
Absolutely. So I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted to be an advocate. I listened to a TED Talk the year before I applied to law school by Brian Stevenson on the death penalty, and I became convinced that I wanted to be a public defender. So that is why I applied for federal clerkships, and specifically I applied for those clerkships along the border because I thought that I would have more access to criminal dockets. And I did, but the majority of my work was still civil litigation. And I was very happy to learn that commercial litigation was nothing like civil procedure in law school. And I really enjoyed clerking. And like I said, it was largely working on a civil docket. So that's sort of what drew me to my practice area. It was by accident, it wasn't planned. And I'm happy to report that I'm very happy 4 years in at my firm.
How about you, Jenna?
So initially, I wanted to go to law school because I wanted to represent professional athletes. At the time, I worked for an international sports agency, IMG, and that's pretty much what I was doing. And majority of the agents that I worked with were all lawyers, understanding contracts, are completely a part of the industry. And so my intention was to go back to law school. At the point in which I did go back to law school with the blessing of my company at the time, IMG, and with the intentions to return to them, I fell in love my first semester with criminal law. The class, it just kind of took me by surprise. And I truly realized that I wanted to, like Daniela said, not only be an advocate, but on behalf of victims and injured people. And so from my criminal law class, Professor Korn was my professor. He just really drew me into it. He's still a mentor of mine to this day and has been a big role in my career. And so that took me into interning at the Harris County District Attorney's Office while in law school, interning for a federal judge in the Southern District of Texas while in law school, and interning for Harris County District Attorney's Office throughout law school. And then after I graduated, just turned into me being at the District Attorney's Office, initially in Fort Bend County. And I spent majority of my career there doing crimes against children and human trafficking cases. So again, it kind of relates to my whole inclination and passion for advocating for victims, especially when you're dealing with victims as vulnerable as children or men and women who have been subjected to sexual abuse in the form of, one-on-one or in a human trafficking setting. And then when I left Fort Bend County DA's office and came to Abraham Watkins, I continued to be able to pursue that passion of representing injured people and victims of negligent personal injury cases. So now what I do is I represent those individuals who have suffered catastrophic injuries and death in the same regard. And so although my practice areas have changed, I think my one consistent is just truly my desire and passion for advocating on behalf of those who have been injured, killed, and can't necessarily advocate for themselves.
Jennifer?
So I think I started in criminal law as well, kind of for a similar reason. It was exciting and I was helping and it was always exciting and the cases were always new and the cases never stop. And so that's kind of, it was exciting and it was fun, and criminal law is exhilarating and exhausting. And so that's kind of what led me to doing criminal law. And then I was in crimes against children at Harris County, and then they took me and brought me here to the Children's Assessment Center where we work with victims of child sexual abuse. So I just just loved it. I loved working with crime. I loved feeling like I was helping people. And so I kind of tend to pick those passion jobs over everything else.
And Kebharu?
You know what? When you ask me like what made me say I wanted to be a lawyer, it's one of those funny things for me. It's just like you think back on elementary school when the teacher asks you, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. I just always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. At that time, I didn't have a logic or a rhyme or reason, but I just followed through with that mindset and that desire to be a lawyer. When I was in undergrad, I was the president of my NAACP, and I just used that as a launching pad for me to put myself out there speaking. I was involved in the moot court competitions in undergrad to prep me for that. And I was always about kind of civil rights and advocacy in some way, but it wasn't like I had this moment or an epiphany where I said I wanted to be a lawyer. Once I got to law school, it's interesting because I knew I wanted to be a trial attorney. I was a big fan of Johnny Cochran. I actually have a photo of him on my desk when I was in undergrad. I met him right after the O.J. Simpson trial. And I never in a million years thought I'd be a prosecutor. But a friend of mine, he's actually a lawyer in Houston, Clyde Markland. He was a year ahead of me, went over to the DA's office. He was like, Kebharu, you're doing all these moot court mock trial competitions. You'd be a great trial lawyer. You should give the DA's office a try. And I was like, I'm not doing that. That's not going to happen. Ultimately, he convinced me. I started off at the DA's office, tried a lot of cases in both Fort Bend and Harris County, went to the Department of Justice and spent 19 years as a prosecutor. So that's my story about why I chose the law and, you know, the area of law I ended up in. So that's just a little background on my area of practice and how I got into the law.
Now, I know a lot of law students, and I had the same experience myself, take courses where they think they want to practice. I went to law school in Louisiana and took all of these Louisiana courses. And then I clerked for a trial judge, thinking I wanted to be a trial attorney, which I succeeded on that part, but moved to Texas in the meantime. Did any of you take that approach of taking classes to prep for where you wanted to be, or clerking and then either saying, wow, this really affirms where I want to be, or the opposite, saying, maybe not? Daniella, I think you touched on this some earlier in your intro.
Sure. So I will go against maybe what others say. I do not think that you need to take classes in a particular area to enter any practice of law. I took only criminal law classes. I represented indigent people charged with misdemeanor crimes my third year in law school. I visited death row. I had no idea that I was going to practice civil litigation. The only class I took was civil procedure. I didn't take business associations, nothing. I mean, it was all evidence, crim pro, and I had no problem picking everything up in my job when I got here. So do what you're passionate about in law school, dabble around. You do not, if anyone tells you, if you don't take, you know, at UT, there's a specific class for clerkships. You know, a judge isn't going to hire you if you don't take the clerkship class. Not true.
Jenna, do you agree with that?
Yeah, so I agree with Daniella that you don't need to take specific courses that maybe you think will lead you into a particular practice area. What I would suggest, and step one, is you need to pass the bar. You can't go to any type of practice area unless you pass the bar first. And so what I always tell my mentees now, and I'm actually a professor at South Texas. I teach mock trial litigation, and I'm an advocacy coach there. And so I interact with a lot of law students on a daily basis. And that's what I tell them. You need to take courses that are going to help you pass the bar, because nothing comes after it until you get there. Now, while you're taking those classes, you should absolutely take advantage of internship opportunities that give you access to real trial skills, real life practice skills, whether that's, you know, a contract writing class or it's an arbitration class. You need to incorporate those skills courses, because the reality is, at the end of the day, when you pass the bar and you get licensed and sworn in, you're a lawyer, and you have to know how to be a lawyer, not a law student. Being a law student is very, very different than being a lawyer. And so it's important that you already have under your belt some of those practical skills, whether you got them in an internship in the summertime, during the semester, or you went and observed, real life people doing what it is you think you want to do. It's just really important to incorporate those aspects of it, because when you get to being a lawyer, you're going to be worlds ahead of your colleagues, and your employers will notice that, and you'll get that noticed in interviews. The other thing I will say to that is to really utilize advocacy courses. Even if you have no intention of being a trial lawyer or any type of litigation at all, the value of advocacy courses is it really teaches you how to take a set of circumstances, a set of facts, a set of information, both legal and non, and analyze it, develop it, explain it, and present it. And each of those steps applies not just to a courtroom and to a jury, it applies to a business client, a corporation you're representing, a family you're representing in a family or civil case. It just transpires to so many areas. And I think advocacy is one of those things that you really take advantage of it when you're in law school, because it'll continue to follow you for the rest of your career.
Jennifer, what are your thoughts on coursework or clerkships?
Yeah, so as far as the classes, I mean, I took a bunch of like capital punishment classes and criminal law classes, and I can't really remember much about any of them. I think the skills that I gained were probably not from the courses so much as public speaking skills, I think helped me the most when I got out, because even when you're doing interviews or talking to other attorneys, they want to see that you can present yourself. And I think that the public speaking benefited me the most. Obviously, whatever you have to take to pass the bar is the most important. And Barbary will, or whatever you choose, will brush you up on everything else. But I don't think that any of them were so beneficial that I couldn't have lived without them. That's just my honest opinion.
Kebharu, what's your advice on tailoring the law school experience?
I would agree with everyone here. I mean, and we could have a totally different panel that's presenting somewhere else in the United States saying something totally different. The clerkship or the classes, you need to, take antitrust to be an antitrust lawyer. But I tend to agree wholeheartedly. I mean, for me, it's kind of interesting to say that I can't say that there was a lot of intentionality in how I landed where I landed. It was a lot of me following my nose and just kind of networking on my own, as was just mentioned moments ago. I mean, really mastering public speaking. For me, one of the best skill sets that I acquired was not even in law school, was waiting tables, learning to walk up and talk to anybody and convince them of what the special was that night and why they should buy it. That really helped me in convincing a jury or selling my case to a jury. So sometimes those soft skills outside of those courses or clerkships can really help you out. And I would imagine that many people in this audience may not have that background where lawyers or you grew up with lawyers in your family, like me. I mean, I was the very first lawyer in my family, so I didn't really have that that kind of reference point to talk about what should I be taking to join an in-house company. So I think that you have to just do what you like. Make sure you will pass the bar. Make sure your soft skills are really good. Because as a state and federal prosecutor, one could ask, how did you end up in Amazon as an IP lawyer? But it was a mix of me following my nose and mastering my skills with the cases that I handle as a prosecutor, as a federal prosecutor in IP. So there's no one route to get to where you want to get in the law. And never believe that. If you want to get in an area, whether you took the courses or not, just pursue it and those doors will open themselves up for you.
And I know many of you on our panel have changed practice areas. So this question is directly for you, and maybe we'll start with you, Kebharu, on this one, since you've been going last in line. But is that really common? Should law students be worried about, landing their dream practice area first year out?
No, many of us, when we go through law school, we're going right out of undergrad and we go right to law school. So by the time we graduate, we're still trying to figure out what we want to. So I encourage experimenting with areas of practice, places to work, and your law. But as you decide to move around and you say you want to start as a prosecutor in the government and you want to go to industry, the one question you want to think about is what portable skills can I bring to the table, right? So as I transitioned out of the government, the questions that I was thinking about as I leave the government and go into an in-house spot, how can I aid this company? Is it through relationships that I've established with law enforcement or with prosecutors across the country? Is it because I understand how investigations work, internal investigations, or how a law enforcement investigation would work? Or is there a particular substance area that I am aware of? So to the extent you can identify the portability of skills that can be moved to different practice areas, then that's what you want to keep account of as you mature in the law. But early on, I would encourage you to, kind of experiment in different areas of the law that you are interested in. And don't feel like you choose an area and you got to practice that area for the next 25, 30 years of your practice.
Can the same be said for internships? For example, a research assistant versus a private firm or a government position?
That's my sense. I mean, just to continue along that path, the internships are the perfect opportunity for you to dip your toe into a space without being fully committed, right? So you should, of course, you should check out internships if you're interested in sports and entertainment like Jenna was, or you're interested in prosecution. Maybe one summer do an internship in sports and entertainment law, and the next summer do an internship with the DA's office or the U.S. Attorney's office. You have those options while you're in law school, to test those areas out. The other thing I would encourage, listeners to do is, if you see an area that you're interested in, go to LinkedIn and find lawyers within that practice and cold chime them or cold send them a message. And the likelihood is that they will respond and spend 10, 15, 30 minutes to you talking about that area of practice if you have questions. LinkedIn is an incredible source for young lawyers or lawyers who have been in practice for some time or any profession to reach out and touch whoever they want to get in contact with.
I couldn't agree more. I have at least one call a month from a law student who just contacts me via LinkedIn. And it's a great opportunity for me as a practitioner to meet someone new, meet a law student, and then hopefully provide some level of advice to help them on their journey. Jennifer, what's your impression about how potentially changing a practice area may affect a career longer term, or selecting an internship perhaps?
So I don't think that an internship really will lock you into anything, because you're going to have so many opportunities to do internships. You get some summers, you could do it over the break, you can do it while you're waiting for your bar results. So I don't think it locks you into anything. I think it gives you some perspective. And it kind of depends. If there's a firm that you know that you want to work at, get an internship there. Maybe they fall in love with you and they want to give you a job, but I don't think it locks you into anything. Try some, see what you think. You may just end up listening to jail calls all day, and that might be super boring, but you can put it on your resume and that counts.
That or cross it off the list. Jenna, any different thoughts on the topic, or Daniella after Jenna?
I would echo what both Jennifer and Kebharu said. The only thing I would add in addition to that, similar to what Kebharu was saying, that make sure no matter what type of internship or job you're currently in, that you know what skills you're gaining and what skills you're expanding on that could transition to another place. I would say the same thing with the internships. Even if you don't end up going into that practice area, understanding how you can tell, a big law firm how work for government and the experience you got as an intern there can transition is incredibly, beneficial to you when you're interviewing. I would also say that in those internships, utilize connections, networks, and relationships. I know I'm being cliche because this is the mentorship committee that's hosting this. But like Kebharu, I was a first-time lawyer in my family. I didn't have anyone to go sit down and talk to and understand what I needed to do and how I could do it and what classes I needed to take. All of my mentors, which Kebharu is actually one of them, he's been incredibly influential in my career and has sort of been there every step of the way for me. But I met him through one of my first internships. I was his intern. And, I capitalized on that opportunity, not only to work for him in that time when he was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, but to continue to maintain that relationship and go back and ask additional questions, ask follow-up, include him in things that were continuing to go on in my career. And he's not the only one I did that with. And to this day, I have very close relationships with my mentors, to the point where when I have changed positions or I have changed areas, they've been incredibly helpful, crucial, and instrumental in helping me do that. So, I'm 8-9 years out and I still have those relationships. So no matter where you intern, capitalize on that.
All good advice. And switching gears a little bit, especially for perhaps first generation attorneys who don't have mom or dad at home talking about their days, or, spewing conference calls over into the home life. Daniella, can you tell us a little bit about what your real day-to-day is like as a litigation associate, and perhaps specifically in a larger law firm in big law?
Absolutely. So my work might be a little bit different than, say, working at a district attorney's office, in the sense that there will not be cases handed to you if you do commercial litigation. So it's very entrepreneurial, and there might be, if you're not networking within your firm, you won't get work, and if you don't get work, you're kind of kicked out because you're not getting the hours. And so I do think that's an important thing that people should know. Of course, there are some big law firms where people are drowning in work, but the majority of law firms sort of expect the people they bring on to make connections with partners, and get their work that way from senior associates and partners. So my day to day is whatever I want it to be, and every day is very different. But I would say that I am the biggest deciding factor in how much I want to work in a day, usually because of the commercial litigation aspect. Meaning, in commercial litigation, most of the work takes place over the course of days or weeks or months. So you might be asked to draft a motion and it's not due for 3 weeks. And then you might be told to review documents, and you need to produce documents and decide which documents are privileged in the next week. So you have to make your own schedule and decide when you're going to work on what. I like that because I would rather leave work at 5 p.m. and do some work at night or work on the weekends. I think that's a little bit different in transactional work, where you're on deals with a client, and a deal might last for 3 days where you're getting 2 hours of sleep, but once the deal's done, there's no more work. Litigation isn't that way. You tend to know what your schedule is going to be for, like I said, weeks, if not months. So you sort of decide your schedule, and you decide your cases in large part.
Jenna, what's your current day-to-day like at a boutique litigation firm, primarily plaintiff side, of course?
My day-to-day involves a lot of case management. So similar to sort of what Daniella was saying, litigation on the plaintiff side, you're expected to network and market the firm and get those cases and work on cases with partners. But once you get those cases that you're working on with partners, you're kind of the lead of it. So it's your job to know what deadlines you have coming up, what needs to be followed up with regards to medical information or medical records, what conversations need to have with the client, what conversations need to have with opposing counsel. And in our firm, we have staff of people that work under each of the lawyers. And so you're not only managing what you need to be doing every day to keep the case moving forward and to be successful, you're managing what other people are doing as well. And then you're also being managed on the top. So it's kind of, it's part of your day is spent being a subordinate, part of your day is being spent being a supervisor, and it's kind of, all over the place. But on any given day, especially, let's say pre-COVID, it's a lot of running to court, being in hearings, client meetings, calls with attorneys. During COVID, it's all of those things, but they take place from right here, which is a little different for all of us. So that's sort of what the day-to-day is like for me. Of course, when I was a prosecutor, it's completely different. You're in court every single day. You're, getting ready for trial, you're meeting with victims, you're meeting with witnesses. I was in charge of running a federal task force that was involved in undercover operations. So sometimes I would be in the office from, until 5:30, 6 o'clock, go home, rest. And at 10, 11 o'clock at night, I was out on the undercover operation headquarters and there till 3 in the morning. So that was a completely different role.
Jennifer, what's on your desk right now and what fills your days?
What's on my desk? I got my mask and some candy. So not a lot on my desk, but a normal day. A lot of Zoom calls right now. So I work pretty 9 to 5 right now, which, like Jenna said, is very different than when you're a prosecutor and you have to work overnight a lot. So this is pretty amazing. Like, I know that I get to leave work at 5 and I don't have to work on the weekends. And it's the first job that I've had that I didn't worry about getting a 10 p.m. call and you've got to be ready to go somewhere. But during the day, it's a lot of Zoom meetings about, right now we're doing a campaign for human trafficking. So raising awareness about human trafficking. We've got 100 employees here. So we are kind of trying to manage that all the time that work in the building. So the concerns that they have on their day-to-day operations, it's kind of just whatever comes up that day. But since I'm not in an attorney role right now, I don't have any cases. So I don't deal with any legal cases here at the CAC. I do some contract work for a place that does kind of civil litigation. And so on the weekends, now I get bored on the weekends because I'm used to working on the weekends, I can do that. But here it's just kind of whatever people need during the day. I'm interacting with other organizations, with law enforcement. I still talk to the DA's office pretty regularly about our ongoing cases. So a lot of communication, I guess, but from this chair. So.
Kebharu, what's the day in the life of an in-house counsel for you?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm on a relatively new team here at Amazon. And as I mentioned, it's the Counterfeit Crimes Unit. And we are basically going after people who try to sell counterfeit goods on the Amazon store. So we work closely with law enforcement, local, state, federal, and international. And that goes directly to the issue that I mentioned earlier, the portability or the ability to transition some of my skills as a prosecutor into an in-house space and pick up the phone and call law enforcement in LA that I've worked with in the past, or in New York, or Europol, or whomever we're working with. Also working with our outside counsel to file lawsuits against counterfeiters, which was a relatively new concept for me. And now that I am the director of our Counterfeit Crimes Unit, supervising a team of other lawyers and investigators and business analysts from Seattle, DC, London, Milan, and China. And then lastly, doing speaking engagements, working with trade associations and brands and doing presentations on what our unit does. So as everyone has mentioned, it's either Zoom or at Amazon, we use Chime. So much of it is virtual. I'm here in DC. I hadn't even met many of my team members in person. So it's a totally different day and age, but each day is different and unique, but they're all exciting and they get to tap into, I think, some of my strengths, people engagement, my soft skills, and my knowledge of criminal law and intellectual property investigations.
One thing I wanted to touch on is mentorship. And Jenna, you started raising this in one of your earlier answers about how you interned for Kebharu and you have had the good fortune of staying in touch and even inviting him to be with us on the panel today. How do young attorneys and law students, seek out and build those relationships and even go to maintaining them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honestly, I'll sound like a broken record. I can't stress enough the importance of connecting with lawyers and establishing a network of lawyers and mentorships. There is no point in your legal career where you will stop benefiting from having a mentor. someone who, and they don't have to be in your practice area. Many of my mentors are in my practice area, but many of them are not. And as I've changed practice areas, that's been even more incredibly beneficial because they all are able to give me advice and sort of, continue to guide me through it. As far as maintaining them, I think what's most important is as soon as you have an opportunity to meet a lawyer, whether, like Kebharu said, you send them a message on LinkedIn and reach out to them and they pick up the phone and call you, or it's someone you're working with during an internship, or someone you meet at a HYLA event, or someone you meet at some type of networking event. It's really important to let them know your interest level and desire to connect with them as a mentor. I think when I was in law school and a young lawyer, I was very much afraid to ask for another lawyer's time or afraid to ask them for guidance or assistance. And what I learned is closed mouths don't get fed. So no lawyers are going to say, hey, you know what? I want to do this for you. So I had to learn, you ask them, do you have time for a coffee? Even a Zoom coffee. Do you have time for a Zoom coffee? I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this or to hear more about what it is that you do. And I really have never had a lawyer tell me no. And in return, I spend a lot of my own time doing it. I mentor students that I coach and teach at South Texas. I'm on many committees that relate to helping mentoring and guiding high school kids, college kids, law school kids, and young lawyers, because I truly could not be where I am today if it weren't for those mentorships. As far as maintaining them long-term, it's just a matter of how you would maintain any kind of friendship, because that's truly what it is. It's a professional friendship and it's a professional level of trust because you're asking this person to help guide your career. So you're investing in them, but they're also investing in you. And so whether it's just popping up and saying, hey, let's grab coffee, or if you get a new position, reaching out to them and letting them know, I'm so excited about my new position. Here's what I'll be doing. Couldn't have gotten here without you. Just those constant notes. I think lawyers really appreciate knowing that their time and energy into a law student or into a younger lawyer does something and means something later in life. And it's also good for their networking. You could end up in a completely different practice area than them, and they might need somebody in your practice area one day, or they might want to refer a case to you one day. And it's really good and crucial for them as well. For me personally, I'm actually about to go back to criminal. I'm going to go work for the U.S. Attorney's Office actually in Dallas as a federal prosecutor. And so with Kebharu, for example, even though I changed into plaintiffs and civil and personal injury, I continue to maintain that connection and that network and relationship. And so now that I'm going back into prosecution, him and I still have that same ability to connect and have him as my mentor. So relationships are just very crucial, and just you'll maintain them as long as you put in the effort to maintain them.
And looking back more at the day-to-day type, what a first-gen attorney might expect in terms of responsibilities. Daniella, would you touch on that in terms of how much of your job is client interaction and interfacing, or how much of it is the desk work like doc review?
Sure. If I can just add one thing to what Jenna said and give it a tip that I'm seeing a lot of young law students doing right now, and I think it's wonderful. If you're interviewing with a firm, before you interview, reach out to young associates and ask them if you can talk about the firm. Every offer that we gave to a summer associate this year, those 3 individuals that we've given offers to reached out to probably 5 people, and during their interviews told the firm what they liked about the firm based off of what they heard. I never thought to do that. I thought, like, I can't reach out to someone I'm interviewing with, they're going to think I'm overstepping. I think that's a great, and that's another way of networking. The people that I've done that with have followed up with me because we shared a connection about something, and now we've sort of fit into a more mentorship role. So following up on Jenna, that's something specific that you all can do now as you're getting ready for your interviews. Okay, so touching on client interaction, it hasn't really changed for me depending on my year. It really depends on the cases that I have. So for example, I'm on a pro bono case right now with the managing partner of my firm, where I was able to first chair the trial of the case. And I talk to that client every day. I was sharing with Brooksie and Jenna before this call, for a year and a half, I've been trying to get kids back to Honduras to be reunited with their father. And right when this call started, I received pictures of the children with their dad, and I was in tears. So you know, there's a case where I'm talking to a client every day because it's a small case. Now, I've been on cases where I am staffed with maybe 10 other attorneys, including the head of our litigation department of the entire firm of BakerHostelter. And I was, you know, at the bottom of the totem pole on that case. So there was no way I was going to get anywhere close to talking to the client. And my communications went to a mid-level associate, who then sent it to a senior level associate, who went to go check with a partner, and then sent a communication to the client. So it doesn't vary by year, it varies by case. And you can decide what cases you want to be on to an extent. If you want small cases, if you're at a good firm, you know, you go to the head of the litigation department and you say, you know, I want a case where it's just me and a partner. And can you make that happen for me within the next year so that I can get courtroom experience? I can be on the signature line of pleadings, and so I can get client interaction. Most firms will put you, you know, or they will make an honest effort to try to put you on a case where you have client interaction. But if you're at a big firm, when you first start out, probably in the beginning, you'll be on big cases where there's just a ton of attorneys, and you might not get that time right away.
That's good to understand that you may not get that from day one, but you know, after proving yourself that those opportunities will be given to you. Jennifer, I want to go back to you next. Can you speak some about how young lawyers, specifically those fresh out of law school, can set themselves up for success in handling assignments? And, you know, some of us will refer to it as managing up in some senses in their first role out of law school.
I think the first role is the scariest because you don't really know what to do. You know, you pick your suit and then you get ready and you go to work the first day, and then you're like, I actually have no idea what I'm doing. I remember the first week somebody told me, you know, you have to file discovery this week for all your trials today because we're on a deadline. And I was like, I mean, what am I discovering? I don't really know how to do it. So you need friends. You have to ask, because otherwise you won't know. And anything that you don't know, you can ask somebody. Ask the questions. You'd rather ask the questions now than later say, you know, well, I've been messing that up for 20 months. I thought I was doing this the right way and I'm not. So I would say always ask, always be polite to people, even, you know, court staff, everybody. Always be polite because you don't know when you need them, and why not be nice to people if you can. You need the friends, make friends. And then take accountability. If you mess something up, say that you messed it up, try to make it right, because you don't know everything. When you start that first day, you hardly know anything. So just be respectful, ask questions, and you'll learn it. The first 6 months, you're going to be lost. Everybody's lost the first 6 months. Just expect it. This is in my first 6 months. I'm clueless. I'm on track, and it's okay.
I like to say they call it the practice of law for a reason. We don't come fresh out of law school knowing anything and everything. We learn it day by day through our mentors and our superiors, and sometimes those who are more junior to us even. I guess fast forwarding in the career trajectory, and I'll go to you, Kebharu, with this one. Every organization is, of course, different. In the terms of a law firm, you normally see growth from associate to partner, and that's the goal. Or in-house, there are a variety of different steps along the corporate or the more corporate rung. And in government positions, there's a variety of different lingo. How can someone quickly and effectively move up in the ranks in their organization and you have those hard conversations about what are the prospects for growth and advancement for me here?
Yeah, I remember when I worked in the Harris County DA's office, there was an award that was given out, the nose to the grindstone, and it went to the prosecutor who had their nose to the grindstone, whether it was because of casework, you know, a successful result on a case, just their grind. So the first thing I would say is, just your work ethic, and it's going to speak for yourself. I mean, as we know, with the practice of law, your reputation is going to always precede you. And that's one thing you do not ever want to mess up in the practice of law. We learn that in law school. We learn that when we get our bar card, that your reputation is going to precede you and it's going to follow you. So you got to protect that. And that also is directly tied to your work ethic and what your work ethic says about you. The other thing that I would say is, outside of like number of years and whether you're past jumping somebody, I think that you just have to be curious. And for me, one reason I love the law is that it allows you to be curious and look into areas that you may not really be connected to. And I say, be curious about your job, be curious about what other people are doing in your firm or in your company, so that when that option comes down the road, you'll have that ability to move up. The key or the interesting thing about working for a company like Amazon, and they tell you this when you come here, is that, Kebharu, you're working in the counterfeit crime space. But one day, if you want to work for Amazon Prime or Amazon Studios, that option is there. But I first need to be curious and learn that business group. Or if I want to go into the business group and move out of the law, I can transition out, but I'm going to have to be curious. So I would just encourage all of the attendees to just be curious about the area that they're in and the contextual areas that touch that, and just about what's going on in the world. And so that's not like a in the box 4-corner answer about how you move up, but I would say focus on your reputation, your work ethic, and just remain, just passionately curious about life and the practice of law.
To all of our panelists, would you have anything else to add about career growth and progression and setting yourself up for success in a different type of structure, perhaps?
One thing I would add to what Kebharu said, which kind of goes along the line of curious, is to be intentional. And, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you're going into a position and you're just, a lower level associate, but you want someday to be a senior associate or to be a partner, or to be a managing partner, or be a non-equity partner, whatever the path or that is there ahead of you, be intentional from day one as to how you're going to do things in your day-to-day to show yourself capable, reliable, and ready to take on those positions should they come to you. So, it's not, some firms have it where it's, you're on a track and based on years or cases or, business that you're bringing in, then it keeps pushing you along the track. But that's not the case for majority of the areas in the law. You have to say, I want to go do this. I'm ready to do this, apply for a promotion, or reach out to a partner in a situation where you're wanting that promotion. So from day one, just be very intentional about it. You don't want to come off as you're not tending to your current responsibilities and you're only looking for the next. You don't want that, but at the same time, you don't want to ever feel and appear as though you're just complacent in your current position and that you're not constantly adding to your skill set, adding to your experience level, and adding to your abilities to one day do more and become more.
I am going to pose one more question to all of our panelists. And let's start with Jennifer on this one. And while they're providing us with their insight, I will, of course, welcome you to submit any questions or comments using the chat or the Q&A feature. So I guess what I'd like to leave our participants with is, what do you wish that you had known when you first started out as a lawyer, Jennifer?
It's going to be okay. When I got out, I was waiting on my bar results and I had a lot of student loans and very little hope. I didn't really know how it was going to go. And I made packets of my resume and my cover letter and I sent them in the mail to a bunch of people and I just waited. And I got interviews and that was great. And each time I've applied for another job, I was able to get interviews and get offers. And so I think there's some security in knowing that if you try, it's going to be okay. You can start making those student loan payments. You'll get to go on those interviews and you'll get a job. And then you can afford to pay your own car payment and stuff again. It's gonna be okay. There's work out there for you if you look.
Jenna, what are your thoughts on what you wish you had known day one out of law school?
One thing I wish I had known, and I'm still accepting and learning it today, is there's no one set track. And because there's no one set track, you cannot compare yourself to where you think you should be or one of your law school classmates is, and why aren't you also there? You know, whether you're an associate, a partner, in-house, a prosecutor, defense attorney, it doesn't matter. Your progress and your track is your own. And to continue to compare yourself to somebody else is never going to be beneficial or successful for you, because where someone else is not indicative of where you are, what type of lawyer you are, how good your work product is. It's all, we get so caught up in comparing ourselves to one another that we forget to kind of look within ourselves and make sure we're doing what we need to do to be the best, and that we're continuing to progress in our own career and our own track, even if it doesn't look like something somebody else is doing or the level that someone else has reached. Because in addition, being in the Houston market is different than being in the Dallas market. Being in Montgomery County as a DA is different than being in Harris County as a DA. So to say, well, if I'm in Houston and I've been out 5 years, I should have this title because my friend in Dallas has the same, you're constantly going to be, trying to push a boulder up a hill just to let it come back on you. So be confident in yourself, be confident in what you're doing, where you are, continue to invest in yourself and improve, rely on those mentorships, rely on networking, and just keep in mind that you're on the right path and to continue forward with it, no matter what other people are doing.
Daniella, going back to day one shoes, what would you tell yourself?
So I wish I would have known that this was going to be a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. I love my job. In law school, you're reading for 3-4 months and then regurgitating something on a paper in, over the course of 4 hours. The practice of law is nothing like that. And it's so much more than just your day-to-day activities. So when you're interviewing, look at how the people you're interviewing interact with each other. I think what drew me to my particular firm, because I was deciding between 2 firms, was that it seemed like the people were friends and they liked going to work every day. And just remember that, lawyers, non-lawyers, everybody is spending a ton of time in their careers over the course of their lifetime, and you want to be happy. And so I'm very happy. And what my firm has given me is not just the legal skills, but the friendships. And for somebody like me who's so social, that's meant a ton to me. So remember to think outside the box of what's important to your job, and just know that it's going to be fun if you're doing something that's checking off even one box for you in a dream legal career.
Daniella, you mentioned having the feeling that folks at your firm were friends. For those of us who maybe don't have the benefit of clerking at a firm where we're considering a job offer, how might you go about feeling out the firm and the firm culture? Would you be open, for example, if someone invited you to lunch or anything along those lines?
Absolutely. And everybody that I've talked to during COVID, I've been very candid about what I think our firm can offer. And, it's tough to make comparisons when you've never worked anywhere else, but I've just told people, this is what it's like for me. And I encourage everyone to ask those questions. Like, how do you get along with other people? Do you guys hang out, on the weekends? My best friend is a senior associate at my firm. And I, came to Houston not knowing her. So I think people would be open to lunch or coffee. If they're not, even if it's a phone call, try to ask questions that will get you to figure out the culture of whatever workplace you're going into.
And Kebharu, I'll turn it over to you on what you wish you would have known when you started the practice.
Yeah, I wish I would have known that, as a lawyer, and it's, I'm thinking 20 years back to 24-year-old Kebharu, who was still kind of teetering between kind of undergrad mindset and calling himself a lawyer and didn't really fully believe it. But what I would say is bring your authentic self to work into the practice of law. especially, I'm talking to Houston Young Lawyers Association. I mean, you all are at a unique point in I believe in our country, in the legal practice. Corporations are ensuring that firms are meeting the mark to bring in diverse outside counsel. And with that in mind, you need to be bringing yourself into that office as you are. And of course, that doesn't mean you just come as you are. And that also taps into having a good mentor, being involved in affinity groups that can help you navigate that space. But my point is that your perspective, your worldview, your background is valued. So day one, bring that into the practice of law with you, because we need that. We need that in prosecution offices. We need that on the bench. We need that with defense attorneys. We need that in-house. So I wish I would have had that conversation where someone said, Kebharu, go in there and just bring the NAACP with you in that DA's office day one, right? That NAACP president that you were in undergrad, bring it, because we needed it. So just navigating that space, and I will go back to join organizations, affinity groups that can help you navigate that, and have those mentors that can help you with that message. Because, what I'm going to see from lawyers in the next 10, 15, 20 years is going to be remarkable and revolutionary. And I'm excited. And I'm excited to see it even in the state of Texas. So that's what I would say.
That is all wonderful advice. And I love what you touched on, Kebharu, about, bringing your NAACP self. I know when I first started practice, I was somewhat robotic and trying to use very professional words. And while we all want to be professional, I so much enjoy cases, as a litigator, when I can have a laugh with opposing counsel, or be more of myself, and not be quite so formal, while still maintaining our professional relationship. It doesn't have to be quite so canned, right? At this time, I just wanted to remind everyone.
And I would add on that, just to say this one point, I mean, it's awesome for me to work for a company where, the general counsel can send out an email that says Black Lives Matter, right? I mean, to be in that space and to just own that, both as an African-American lawyer and a first-generation lawyer, to see that. And so I think that you all are at a point in history and in this country where your background is going to really merge with the practice of law, where you can really be true advocates. And at the end of the day, remember that you are advocates. And if you can't advocate for yourself, how are you going to advocate for others?
That's excellent advice. And at this time, if anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the box. And a reminder, this is of course accredited for 1 CLE hour. The course number is in the chat box. And I'll take the opportunity to remind and plug everybody about our committee's programming. We'll be kicking off the mentorship circles, which is a great opportunity for you to put into action some of the advice of our panelists today in seeking out mentors and forming relationships within the community. We will be pairing, we've had more than 100 register for the mentorship circles program, and we'll be placing them into small groups of a handful of attorneys and setting you guys up to form those connections, even while we're stuck working from home or not being able to go to that lunch date or that happy hour formally presented by HYLA. And we will continue with this Prepare to Practice series, of which this panel on picking a practice area is the first, in setting you guys up for success, both as law students and young lawyers. So stay tuned to the newsletter for more programming announcements throughout the spring bar year. And with that, I will thank you all as our panelists, Daniella Martinez, Jenna Rudoff, Jennifer Hill, and Kebharu Smith, for joining us today and making time to share your experiences with our HYLA community.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to.
Brooksie.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Jenna, thanks for your help in making this program a success and inviting Kebharu to participate.
Yeah, no problem. I'm transferring to Dallas like in a week. So I don't know if that keeps me from continuing to be involved, but I'd like to and do the mentorship circles. I mean, since everything's going to be Zoom. but I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, we
Fine by
already-
me.
Do what?
you're an
I said,
excellent-
fine by me. You have my official blessing.
Okay.
Yeah, Jenna, that was excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your advice. I really enjoyed that. I think our attendees did too. And Brooksie, as always, great job leading the charge in the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
I always, under or overestimate number of questions, but panelists, thank you for being flexible. Jenna, thank you for being flexible and kind of jumping around there.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys. And Brooksie, when my email address changes from Abraham Watkins, before that, I'll send you my personal email so that I can stay on the communications and everything.
Yes, sounds great. And so I wanted to tell you, I've always been interested in serving as an adjunct or something like a coach. So if you ever hear of any opportunities, let me know. I know you may be relinquishing duties with your geographic move, or I don't know if you intend to continue in a remote capacity, but I'd love to get plugged into that community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I coach moot court and mock trial, and I've been doing it 8 or something years. And then I teach the course, and even though I'm moving, I'm still going to teach the course because right now it's pretty much virtual. And I'm still going to be involved with coaching for South Texas. So if you're interested and they need help or they need someone to come guest judge, then I'll give them your information. And then I always tell people that once you go and guest judge, just talk to the other coaches and say, hey, I'm interested. Rob Galloway is the head of the advocacy program, and him and I are longtime friends, and he's always looking for people to help out and to get involved. So I'll be happy to send your information.
That's cool, especially because I went to LSU for law school. The first opportunity I had to give back with them was this year with the, rise of the Zoom mock trial and moot court competitions.
Yeah.
So no, I'll keep that in mind.
And I think HYLA, because of HYLA, is asking for judges for NTC. So I'm the coach for the NTC for South Texas. I know that we'll probably be sending out emails too, asking for people to come help, but I know HYLA is working with TYLA to get judges for that as well.
Yeah, we got contacted about including it in our newsletter. So it was in Monday's newsletter, Brooksie. We'll probably include it for the next few weeks if you want to judge.
Yeah,
There's a link.
Any word from the deans on the mock interviewing?
So we were supposed to have the meeting today that was canceled.
I'll let
so
you
I
guys
have
go
an-
so you can talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye. So yeah, I have an email that I started and then got distracted and haven't sent yet, but I'll just email them because this just has not worked out the way I thought it could casually work out in one of these meetings.
Oh, no worries. If I hit stop recording, it'll be fine for the.
It'll be fine. Yep.